Origin Chance, home switch and this is every bias explained in 8 minutes by channel the Paint Explainer. Yeah, I've watched his two so videos, I think. Two? Yeah, I think I've watched two or three video about him. Where he explained ideologies, basically, political ideologies and things like that, right? He's made two of them. He's saying that he's gonna make third one as well. I don't know how many more than three, but yeah, I didn't know that many ideologies existed. After the first one, I'm like, how the fuck is there a second? But no, there's also a third now. Okay, yeah, this guy is really knowledgeable in that way because he talks about a lot of things that a lot of ideologies and things that I didn't hear about. And also this one, bias is explained. Now understand bias, but all this like apophenia, anchoring, unit, recency, omission. I get it. The type of biases people have. Hindsight, halo. What the hell is a halo? So yeah, this is gonna be interesting as well. Another one in 80-minute type of video. Yeah, Bill Wood started this, if I remember correctly. His video was like 100 plus millions views, right? Everything explained in sort of made type of way. Everything Japan explained this made type of way. There, other people started to do that similar thing. The religion video I watched about was also like this. Christianity explained in this way, all religions explained in this way, right? From the channel Redeem Zoomer, which is like interesting. I won't say I'm a religious guy as much. I'm an Indian, so I was born Hindu, so there's gonna be religious element around my life. I won't point blank say I'm a religious guy, but yeah, that was very interesting to see that, right? So this is about biases. Now this is going to be really interesting because I guess bias is the one thing that people don't see, that because it's a bias, right? I mean, it's really rare to see strong biases, people acknowledging themselves, because usually people are like, if they know that they are biased towards something, they usually correct themselves, right? I mean, that doesn't apply all the time, but yeah, most of the time. So biases are the one thing that goes unnoticed for most of people. So it's going to be awesome. I don't know which biases I have, but I guess when I hear about this, I'll know it, I guess. So let's watch it. Remember, we'll flag my and don't subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react to more. I like things like this, ideologies and political things like that. I watch Crowd and also this and many other channels like this. So if you want to watch those videos, check out the link in the description. There you'll find it, I guess, on my channel. I react to a lot of stuff. I don't have a theme because I like everything basically, most things. And I like to gather knowledge in most things as well. Sometimes people ask me like, how do you know about all this stuff? I read things. So there's like a lot of science, history, ideologies, video games, and all the stuff, reactions if you haven't seen. Yeah. And in the end card and the end of the video as well. I'm Instagram now. If you want to follow me on Instagram, but that's the only, not the only one. I also have Twitter, but on Twitter I don't do much. I just post this like videos when I post. So because sometimes YouTube don't send notifications, so on Twitter you can find it type of way. But proper social media, I only have Instagram. So if you want to follow me, link in the description as well. Yeah, let's watch it.
Bias blind spot. The tendency to think that oneself is less affected by cognitive biases compared to others. Gambler's fallacy. Gamblers.
I'm glad I think came out in this video at the start like, oh, I'm so good, I don't have any biases. I'm so good at everything. I don't have any bias. I'm glad I didn't do that because the first sentence alone would have just crushed me. I guess that's why I did that. I'm guessing people are like, oh, I don't have bias, but this is gonna be interesting. And yeah, bias blind spot. There you go. That's you. I like the finger.
Fallacy happens when there's a tendency to think that future probabilities are altered by past events, when in reality they are unchanged. Omission bias. It's the
Oh my god, how many times I want to pause this? Like he's just like going through. I mean, that's what he does every few seconds. Next one, but yeah, that is so good. That's like humans. Statistics are really hard for humans, right? I roll heads 10 times, so 11th must be tails. Like, no, that's not how it works, right? So people are like, yeah, this is so good.
tendency to judge harmful actions as worse or less moral than equally harmful inactions. Proportionality bias. Our innate tendency to assume that big events have big causes, which may also explain our tendency to accept conspiracy theories. Moral credential effect. It occurs when someone who does something good gives themselves permission to be less good in the future. Self-serving bias.
Who the? Oh my god, is that a real thing? If I do good now, it's like a bank. I've credit now. I can do bad things in the future, and it equals it out. I don't think that's how it works, man. And I'm pretty sure lots of religions basically make sure that people don't see it like that. Like you have to do like a million good, even if you did one bad type of ways. Like balance will never be equal, according to bad. I'm pretty sure that's the case because they see things like this coming.
It's the tendency to claim more responsibility for successes than failures. Framing effect. The framing effect is the tendency to draw different conclusions from the same information, depending on how that information is presented. This includes the contrast effect, which is the enhancement or reduction of a certain stimulus's perception when compared with a recently observed contrasting object. Actor-observer bias. It's the tendency for explanations of other individuals' behavior.
I guess the last one, well, like, is basically glass half full type of thing. Maybe not even that. It's like that come close to pick and choose type of way. I guess that's how news does it well. Especially news that stay close to fact, tries to stay close to fact, but still like twist things. They use that kind of tactics, right? You have to really see people like you're saying this, but it can also mean this. So I guess you're just bullshitting at this point.
Behaviors to overemphasize the influence of their personality and underemphasize the influence of their situation, and for explanations of one's own behaviors to do the opposite. Picture superiority effect. The notion that concepts that are learned by viewing pictures are more easily and frequently recalled than are concepts that are learned by viewing their written word form counterparts. Outcome bias. It's the tendency to judge a decision by its eventual outcome instead of the quality of the decision at the time it was made.
Through Healthify Me, I have been able to regulate.
All right, the picture bias thing, is that a bias? Isn't that a scientific reason? Like, if you see a picture, you'll understand better things than you'd see if you see words and text. I think that's like that's mostly affects. That's because of how brain works, and it's not just bias, right? A brain can see pattern really well and associate pattern because I'm guessing patterns are more complex than simple words and letters, right? So before you can words, if you see a word, you seeing a word that is like a tag, you'd have to associate that tag like slippery. Now what does slippery mean? Then you have to process slippery, and then you have to process an image in your head. What does slippery mean? You do that very fast, so you don't realize it, but you go through that feeling. But you see the picture, you're directly seeing the image, and you just process it that way. So I guess that's how brain works. No, I don't think it's much of bias or something. I don't know.
The quality of the decision at the time it was made. Mere exposure effect. The mere exposure effect is a psychological phenomenon by which people tend to develop liking or disliking for things merely because they are familiar with them. Hard, easy effect. It's the tendency to overestimate one's ability to accomplish.
All right, I'm confusing bias, right? Maybe I don't know what bias mean. Does bias just mean that this is how it is, or bias mean like this is like not real or wrong way? Because I'm guessing that bias just mean like uh, basically like how you see a picture that you'll understand more. That's a bias because you know what should I don't know what should have equal meaning, but I'm confusing bias. Does bias mean that it's not true but people think it is in that way? Because I think I'm getting that wrong. I don't know.
Hard tasks and underestimate one's ability to accomplish easy ones. Survivorship bias. Survivorship bias happens when concentrating on the people or things that survived some process and inadvertently overlooking those that did not because of their lack of visibility. Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also called frequency illusion, is the illusion where something that has recently come to one's attention suddenly seems to appear with very high frequency shortly afterwards. The reality.
Oh, okay. I don't look. I'm on pills right now. I recently got an injury. I'm on like strong dose of tramadol. My memory is affected, so I don't know. I might feel too stupid now than usually. But yeah, I know what bias is now. Just yeah, that bias is like favoring one thing compared to other, even if it's two equal. That's what bias is usually means. So yeah, this can all fall into bias one. So yeah, this is so good. This one, this happens a lot, right? I mean, even in video games, I remember like, oh my god, I want something now, I can't even find it. And then when I don't want something, it's like in GTA. Remember, there were some missions that you have to acquire some cars. Even in GTA, wait a minute, was it GTA 5 San Andreas? But yeah, you have to acquire some cars. You're like, oh, for God's sake, just like an hour ago, I was seeing a lot of these cars, and now I don't. This is like, this is similar. Like, oh, look at that, I just saw Prius. What the fuck? There's another Prius. It's not that because it's more. It's because you notice. Then you'll see the similarity somewhere else. Before it would just be like a ghost. You wouldn't even notice it.
Is that before we placed our attention on that element, we just ignored it. Availability heuristics. The availability heuristic is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that easily come to mind. The availability of memories can be influenced by how recent they are or how unusual or emotionally charged they may be. Dunning-Kruger effect.
That's so good.
It's the tendency for unskilled individuals to overestimate their own ability and the tendency for experts to underestimate theirs. Halo effect. It's the tendency for a person's Kruger effect. It's the tendency for unskilled individuals to
I know that,
overestimate their
but
own ability and the tendency for experts to underestimate theirs.
what? That's also part of Dunning-Kruger effect that experts underestimate the thing because I see that a lot. Proper experts, like scientist level, like this is one I don't know. Maybe like man, just like that guy is basically saying with full confidence he doesn't know shit. I mean, they're mostly like, because they're more professional. They learn things about the world, they learn things about the thing, so they will never say something with confidence because they know that most things in the world is barely like at a point that it is, right? Things are barely facts. I don't even, people don't even like when you say facts in any scientific way. Like, what do you mean by fact? So I guess that's the thing. And people who don't know shit is, I know everything, this and that. So that's why. But this is so true, man. Experts are basically like, this is what I don't know, man. They just try to like slowly back away, even though they probably know more than most people.
Halo effect. It's the tendency for a person's positive or negative traits to spill over from one personality area to another in others' perceptions of them. Pygmalion effect. The phenomenon whereby others' expectations of a target person affect the target person's behavior in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Decoy effect.
Pygmalion effect. Yeah, I think that's also that's psychological driven, right? If you treat somebody and think of somebody somewhere and then you treat of them somewhere, the other person would basically feel that, will try to mirror that, just so consciously they don't basically disappoint you or something. That shit happens all the time, right? If somebody thinks of you, if let's just say you are like growing up, somebody thinks you're a bit of tough guy than you are, and you get that feeling, you'll try to act tough from there on, even if you don't realize it. This is very psychological driven, man.
This bias is widely used in marketing. It's the phenomenon whereby consumers will tend to have a specific change in
20 सालों से इंडिया का फेवरेट
between two options when also presented with a third option that is asymmetrically dominated. An option is asymmetrically dominated when it is inferior in all respects to one option, but in comparison to the other option, it is inferior in some respects and superior in others.
God, I see that all the time when trying to buy a car. I distinctly remember, like, okay, base model will be like, okay, decently priced because it's base. Anybody going for the base model will be fine. But anything in the middle will be like really high price than the base one. And the top model will not be that high price compared to the middle one, but it will have a lot of features because they know somebody that's going for the middle will probably go for the higher one, right? That's the kind of shit. iPhone, I mean, nowadays iPhones are base iPhones are priced fairly compared to the technology other phones give you, or at least that's how it feels in where I live in India, right? But yeah, before, I remember like 5 or so years ago, base iPhone was not justifiable, but Pro was like justifiable even though it had a high money. Nowadays, I guess iPhone is so like big, they don't care. iPhone Pro is going to be insanely costly. They know people will buy it just because of the image thing. So yeah.
Others. Selection bias. Selection bias is the bias introduced by the selection of individuals, groups, or data for analysis in such a way that proper randomization is not achieved, thereby failing to ensure that the sample obtained is representative of the population intended to be analyzed. Anchoring bias.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
anchoring bias is the tendency
affect
to
a lot of
rely
people.
too heavily on one trait or piece of information when making decisions, usually the first piece of information acquired on that subject. This is why first impressions are so important. They paint a picture of what the other person is, and that picture gets anchored, making it hard to change. This bias is often exploited during negotiations. When the seller gives a seemingly unreasonable high price, that price becomes the starting point for the negotiation, and the buyer inadequately adjusts from it. Confirmation bias.
Yeah, in contracting, I'm civil contractor, industrial civil contractor. In contracting, that happens a lot of shit, right? Client put let's just say like uh, Landmark. That's a chemical company, right? Who basically gives you tender, right? Now they give you tender. Now they probably will like give tender to 2 or 3 people, but they'll give a tender to a newer guy as well. A newer guy won't know how to put price there, like how to rate things, right? So they'll basically give you a very low rate. Now Glenmark was never gonna give work to that guy, but they'll use that as a chip to basically make sure you go down. Now their price will be insanely low to you, right? When you see the price, like, how the fuck that even makes sense? Now they know you will never go down there because their price doesn't even fit the material and anything, right? Material cost, labor cost, you won't even fit that. But they still used to, make sure that after 2 3 negotiations you're really really low, really cheap, where your margins come down insanely. So yeah, this is basically similar to that.
Confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, focus on, and remember information in a way that confirms one's preconceptions. Overconfidence effect. The overconfidence effect is the tendency to have excessive confidence in one's own answers to questions. For example, for certain types of questions, answers that people rate as 99% certain turn out to be wrong 40% of the time. Ego-centric.
Yeah, I can never be that. I have some form of OCD and I always second guess shit, right? Even if I know about something because I just read it, I know it, I've went through it, whatever the point must be. I'm like, Okay, I think I know 80%, maybe 70%. I don't know. I always have that tendency. Like sometimes it become a problem where you need confidence. Like, okay, come on, be confident. I have to remind myself, like, come on, man. I have OCD, some form of OCD, I guess. I'm not even diagnosed, so I don't know if I have OCD or not. But I feel like some type of OCD, just let's just be strong. Let's try to be confident.
Egocentric bias. Egocentric bias is the tendency to rely too heavily on one's own perspective or have a higher opinion of oneself than reality. Examples of this are the false consensus effect, which is the tendency for people to overestimate the degree to which others agree with them, and the false uniqueness bias, which is the
Who was the poll that says Hillary's gonna win? I guess they fit in this category. Oh, this is we talked to 10 people. That might as well be 300 million. There you go. Hillary's gonna win. Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
tendency of people to see their projects and themselves as more singular than they actually are. Information bias. Information bias is a cognitive bias to seek information when it does not affect action. Hindsight bias. The hindsight bias is sometimes called the I knew it all along effect, and it is the common
This is the
tendency
biggest
for
one.
people to perceive past events as having been more predictable
Whenever you're in shit, you'll always, hey man, you should have known better. You should have done this. You should have done like, God damn. I remember the South Park episode. What was it? Mr. Hindsight. He flies through the sky, comes on. You should have done that. You should have done that. There was a fire. There should have been a fire escape there. It's just like, yeah, thanks, Mr. Hindsight. And I don't know who was like. It's always Kyle, I think. Like, what the fuck? How did that help? Everybody's Mr. Hindsight. That's the thing. Everybody knows everything, right? And I've noticed that a lot. Like, even I've noticed that when I do something wrong, I was later on like, man, I should have done this, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't thought that before it happened because clearly I didn't know that, right? When the possibility is 100, when shit happens, then possibility comes down to only two, wrong and the right one. So it's very easy to pick between those two and know what is the one to choose. Before something happens, it's like 100 possibilities. It's very easy to say, I'm Mr. Hindsight before after it happens.
than they actually were. Projection bias. It's the tendency to overestimate how much one's future selves will share one's current preferences, thoughts, and values, thus leading to suboptimal choices. Apophenia. Apophenia is the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. This bias is one of the ways a stereotype can lead people to expect certain groups and traits to fit together, and then to overestimate the frequency with which these correlations actually.
Okay, I was just about to say like these people are gonna be most happiest one because they see, oh, this coin, this must be a good sign. This must be a good sign, so they're gonna be happy. And then he's like, they associate one bad guy with everything. Oh my god, here comes a racist. Basically, they'll fit this category. And also like black cat crosses my path is all going to be bad. I guess they fit the category as well. So no, then that's not gonna be good.
Occur. Another type of apophenia is pareidolia, which happens, for example, when you see images of animals in the clouds. Serial position effect. The serial position effect is the tendency of a person to recall the first and last items in a list better than the middle ones. Recency bias. The recency bias gives
What?
greater importance to the serial
Back up.
position effect. The serial position effect is the tendency of a person to recall the first and last items in a list better than the middle ones. Recency bias.
Okay, I've never heard of that kind of thing. I didn't know that even existed. What the fuck? People do that shit?
The recency bias gives greater importance to the most recent event, such as an interviewer who can vividly remember just the last person he interviewed because they're the most recent conversation they had. It's related to the serial position effect. Authority bias. Authority bias is the tendency to attribute greater
How is that about? Isn't that like their latest memory would be like more stronger? Isn't that, I don't know? Did I miss something?
accuracy to the opinion of an authority figure, no matter what the opinion's content is. Unit bias. The standard suggests it's related to the serial position effect. Authority bias. Authority bias is the tendency to attribute greater accuracy to the opinion of an authority figure, no matter what the opinion's content is. Unit bias.
I mean, that's not completely wrong, though. I mean, I'm not saying the authority bias is like can't be wrong, but it's going to be less wrong than anything else, right? If somebody's an expert, there's a high chance they know better than you. Not that they're not going to get wrong, but if they can get wrong, you can definitely get wrong. They have less chance of getting something wrong. Like everybody goes back to COVID and like COVID vaccine, like how wrong they were, but they're less wrong than anybody else would have been. It's like this happened, yeah, but anybody else doing it would have been even more worse. It's like either take this or don't take anything and die. People always point out like how much wrong all this like expert got it, but yeah, that you should be happy that that's the only thing that got wrong, not more worse than that, right? Shit was happening there. They came up with a vaccine in a year or two. That's nothing. In research period, that's nothing. Or they were wrong about mask. Yeah, they were winging it at that point. They didn't know shit. You didn't know even more. You didn't even more know shit, right? If if you're not gonna listen to them, you're gonna make shit up. You're gonna go back to like 15 and 12th century, or like burn some incense and pray for it. What you gonna do? So yeah, that bias thing is kind of true, and nowadays people like to shit on like expert, like, oh, you were wrong. Yeah, they were less wrong than you would have been. They were winging it at that point. There's a reason, because of experts we have this world. Otherwise, we would be like horse cart or something in some kind of a weird house with, like candle lamp or something rather than LED lights. I mean, come on.
Bias. The standard suggested amount of consumption, like the food serving size, that's perceived to be appropriate. A person would consume it all, even if it was too much for that particular person. Availability cascade. It's a self-reinforcing process in which a collective belief gains more and more plausibility through its increasing repetition in public discourse. It can be summarized in the phrase, repeat something long enough and it will become true.
That's a political truth, right? I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about how many truths are there. There is like factual truth or something, which is like real truth, which is it is whether you like it or not. There's political truth, which basically this availability cascade. It's like, if you repeat it long enough, it's just like crooked Hillary or something, right? Enough people repeat it, that's what you're gonna associate with. I can't remember exact things, but yeah, there's many wrong things that like repeated enough time, people just associate with that. I don't know.
Related to the availability heuristic, bandwagon effect. It's the tendency to do things because many other people do the same. This effect can happen for two reasons. Conformism, when someone wants to fit in with others, or lack of information, where the person thinks that the opinion of many people is probably more accurate than just his. Illusory truth effect. People are more likely to identify as true statements those they have previously heard, even if they cannot consciously remember having heard them. Next in line effect. When taking turns speaking in a group using a predetermined order, like going clockwise around a room, people tend to have diminished recall for the words of the person who spoke immediately before them. In-group bias. In-group bias is the tendency for people to give preferential treatment to others they perceive to be members of their own groups. It usually happens because we encounter and interact with people in our group much more frequently than with strangers. This makes people in our group seem unique, while people outside of our group seem boring and conformist. The mere exposure effect also plays a role in this bias. Spotlight effect.
I don't. That would be like very weak-minded approach. I'm pretty sure most people are like, oh, these are my friends, so I like them more than the other ones, and they consciously know that because they interact with them, they're better than the others, in that way, right? I don't think they just assume that these are just better than everybody else who's boring, right? I don't know.
It's the sensation that everybody is focused on us that comes from overestimating the extent to which other people notice our appearance or behavior. Choice supportive bias.
Nobody
The tendency to remember our choices as better than they actually were, because we tend to over-attribute positive features to options we chose and negative features to options not chosen. Ostrich effect.
I see that way too much. Way too much. Even people that I'm close with, right? I know for a fact that, somebody just chose wrong thing just based on spreadsheet and specs. And then they justified by just saying this positive thing. And other thing that they didn't choose, constantly say about negative things. And I always point out, yeah, but what about this positive thing that you didn't choose? They're going to just like walk away from the conversation. Yeah, I guess they justify it to themselves more than anybody else, because they constantly need to feel like, oh, I made the right choice. They need to feel that to justify whatever cause they use. And I guess there is no right or wrong. It's what you like. People need to understand, like, I liked it. Doesn't matter if it's good or not. There you go. Rather than justify it.
Effect. People tend to bury their head in the sand and avoid potentially negative but useful information just to avoid psychological discomfort. Selective perception bias. It's the tendency not to notice and more quickly forget stimuli that cause emotional discomfort and contradict our prior beliefs. Peak end rule. People seem to perceive not the sum of an experience, but the average of how it was at its peak and how it ended. I'll be making similar videos. Subscribe to see them.
Yeah, the peak effect also applies to like vehicle stats, horsepower. Oh, it's just this horsepower. Or which RPM or this RPM. What about the other RPMs? That doesn't matter about that. You need to see the graph, how linear the power curve is. People don't realize that. A bike that is 100 horsepower can be better than the bike that is 130 horsepower just because of the power curve. But yeah, I don't know. It's like one of those things. Man, he's gonna make another video like this. How many biases are there? Look at that appliance program, all this. Whoa, 35 already. More is gonna be there. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. Some of them is really insane. A lot of them I kind of knew about, but didn't know the name of it. Some of them I just had no idea like that is even a thing. So that is really good. Right, well, that was every bias explained in 8 minutes, I guess. But the paint explainer. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, if you want to see, other reactions like this, comment down and check out the end cards. I guess right now you'll find it there. I'm Instagram now, like I said. If you want to follow me, and yeah, I'll see you next time.